All right, so this is just to give a quick introduction on this whole layover that you're going to see in this video, and this is just going to make it quick so it's understandable and it becomes very easy to grasp the concepts of what I'm going through in this video and what we'll be talking about as far as narcissistic personality disorder is concerned, right? So it may even be said that we could have put collective unconscious here because that's where all of these things are coming from. What are these things? I'm going to explain, right? There's a pre-existing collective consciousness in the world as we know it, pre-exists you and me. There are people that make rules, that make laws, that make orders and disseminate them amongst people in society. Those are its offices, like the schools, like certain agencies, et cetera, et cetera. You have wardens that are in control of these things, these ideas that are disseminated amongst people in society. And you have the wardens, pundits, people like teachers, officers of certain offices, for instance, okay? And through the media, I could have made a small declension here that would have maybe made this a little bit easier, but I'm just going to talk about it through the media and through these auspices. What ends up happening is they get to the parental or familial system, and from there they are distributed to the offspring of the children of the parents and the familial system. And if we think about this too, we were all children at one time. The parents were children at one time, and they had to go through society's offices like schools, for instance, et cetera, et cetera. And all these things were brought into the awareness of our parents or us in general as a direct action. And we could say from the repository of the collective consciousness, which draws on the bigger collective unconscious from Carl Jung's analytic psychology, right? If you look into that, you'll see this whole idea here also borderlines on Lacanian psychology's idea of the big other as being the repository of language. And if it's the repository of language, it's also the repository of naming. And people that are in society, as far as offices, wardens, and pundits, that could be your favorite singer, you know, and certain terminology that he's made, certain new trends that he's made, certain new cult followings that are created because of the trends and the ways that they look at things, and people want to be cool, so they follow it or whatever, you know, and that usually usurps the parental familial system, you know, which is why parents have such a problem with kids listening to rap, rock, and all these different things. And it was such a big thing when I was growing up, okay? So we go over to here, and I'm going to pull this up just a little bit because you'll see that the pre-existing collective consciousness, and I was talking about the big other of Jacques Lacan and Lacanian psychology, okay? This also banks on the collective conscious, right? Society, now people that are empowered to give names to certain niches in culture, et cetera, et cetera. We have the naming here, okay? They also instill, this is the socializing or socialization function, okay? And the naming is really, if you think back, and if we want to look at this archetypally, it's an Adamic function, okay? Adam was charged to name all the animals in the Garden of Eden, okay? And then the society, the office wardens, pundits, you know, as far as, okay, let's go to the psychologists, the psychiatrists, right? They diagnose and they categorize these ailments and illnesses, and they name them. They basically bring these norms out, these continuous habits that they see people caught in, and they name a disorder for it. They diagnose it. They categorize it. Okay. And the parental and familial system, the offspring to the offspring, okay? Society as well, teaching the parental and familial systems through the media. I could have made another declension here, okay? They teach and redistribute the facts that are named, instilled, and diagnosed. Okay, and what are we talking about that's named, instilled, diagnosed? Morbid grandiosity, NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, and basically what happens here with this side of things is that a narcissistic personality disorder diagnosed person is subject to alienation by who? By education instilled people. That's these over here, okay? Because this is what instilled the education, the pre-existing collective consciousness, society, okay? They name it, they instill it, they diagnose it and categorize it. We teach it and redistribute it to family members and people that we know that have been hurt. They teach it to us as well, though, too, okay? So NPD diagnosed person is subject to alienation by education and instilled individuals, right? And by hurt victim mentality persons, people that have been hurt by somebody that meets the classification even loosely of a narcissist. There's a bunch of YouTube videos on this, and people are just automatically claiming that a person's a narcissist. However, they don't have the right, just like even I don't have the right, to diagnose or categorize these things. We can think for ourselves and maybe make a wise guess on what something is, okay? But it's really these individuals, the society, its offices, warden, and pundits that do that. We're just learning here on the in-between, okay? Now, what ends up happening is these hurt and victim mentality persons are family members, spouses, random persons, and this ends up being the cultured people of society. In this lecture, this is what we're going to talk about, how this has affected us, and really, and what I mean by this, narcissistic personality disorder, this big, almost a cult, as far as Sam Vaknick is talking about. It's the new religion, and you know, people are getting this taught to them at home through society, through the media, through their cell phones, through wanting to make selfies, wanting to make, wanting to be that person whose everybody's eyes are on. Okay, it ends up being something that becomes morbid grandiosity, NPD. These people become super inflated, you know. And keep in mind again, and I will say it in the video, that hurt victim mentality people that are living out of that and are not trying to do anything better to divorce themselves of their suffering, of their unforgiveness or whatever, they're really holding themselves back. And this is also a form of inflation, of grandiosity, but in reverse, okay? And these are the cultured people of society. I'm going to go to the main video content and the main lecture content. I just felt that it would be nice to give a preliminary overview of what this layout actually means. And we will go to the main video now. All right, so here we are back at it again with another Thinking in Circles lecture, okay? This one is going to be about a subject that I've really been wanting to talk about for quite a while. We're going to get into a lecture on a topic that's near and dear to me, and I'm pretty sure it's near and dear to a whole lot of you guys too, okay? And it's a topic on narcissism. We've all had a relationship that ended up a fiasco. We learned about the terms of narcissism, and we came to grips with the fact that we were dating a narcissist. Man, that broad was crazy. Oh man, that dude was, you know, hell on wheels. That dude was 100% befitting of all the keynotes of a narcissist, right? We're going to talk about this, and I'm prefacing this really quickly without giving everything about it away because it's really an interesting topic. I just personally think, from what I've heard on many forums about narcissism, I really feel that it is more of a social construct. It's something that's put together by society. They have the ability to name it and diagnose it, and individuals are diagnosed as such, and then even some individuals aren't diagnosed as such. You have people without degrees running around giving people that they've had bad run-ins with personal diagnosis. Oh, I think this person is a narcissist, and it's contributed to the breakdown, I believe, in communicational relationships between people you just meet, family members, potential love relationships, when maybe we could have been a bit stronger, and maybe we could have worked with the individual a little bit more. Maybe that person needed to grow up a bit. And narcissism has a lot to do with infantile grandiosity. Okay, people acting like kids, and you can see that in some of your worst relationships, I guess, in certain friends' relationships that you can look back on and think about. However, I'm gonna put up a layover at some point here, and I may give a little bit more of a description of it, but it will pertain to the portions that I'm talking about. And also too, there's a quaternio that I'll be positing in this lecture that will help to give you some insight if you can focus on its points. Carl Jung used quaternios a lot. You'll hear me reference this in this lecture that I've written up. Took a long time to write it up, sat on it, really developed a lot of the key pieces so that you guys could have the pleasure of taking on this subject, possibly from a different viewpoint and angle, but I've chosen to approach it from all the angles that would matter in a scholarly manner, okay? I don't want to just approach this with, oh, this is what I think about it, and that's it, okay? Which I really am going to tell you, a lot of people are. I've looked at a lot of these sites where they're talking about narcissism, and it's rampant with a lot of conjectures that are leading people to conclusions that are leading to, or is leading rather, to much more of a divide between individuals' cohesiveness. Okay, and we're at a time where we don't need to be looking at others as if, oh, this person may be a narcissist, oh, this person may be trying to do this or this. I mean, cluster B personalities comprise not only narcissism. Okay, I would like us to think about moving forward as I begin to read this and comment on my own commentary here, okay? But we also have psychopathy. We also have sociopathy, okay? Individuals that are sociopaths that are trying to use you and just get a kick out of using people, you know what I mean? Out of getting what they can from people at every turn. It's all about narcissistic supply. It's all about feeling better over getting over somebody in the end, or coming from a standpoint of just emptiness, where individuals will actually turn around and prey on other individuals just to feel better about themselves, about the negativity that they're living their lives out of, And to be honest and truthful with you, I think that a lot of people will say that it's not curable. There are some that will say it can be helped. There are some that, like me, myself, I would say that it's something that definitely can be turned around. And it just all comes with the narcissist facing what's at the root of everything that he's going through and that he or she has seen, and living their life out of. And then they realize that, I'm living a life based on other people's viewpoints, other people's idea of the way life should be, and it's empty. It's without any ground, But nevertheless, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to this lecture because it's really an interesting topic, okay? And it's going to school us on a lot of the different pieces about what narcissism is and we're going to look at it from a lot of different interesting angles. First and foremost, if you haven't liked any of these videos, if you want to support the algorithms and give me a way to reach people with more of this type of content, please give a like, please subscribe, please share, please bookmark it, please go back and look at it, check it out for holes, talk to me, we'll conversate about it, because this is a topic I'm really interested in, as I see that it's something that's plaguing the world, quote unquote plaguing. It's like, oh, you know, it's a new disease. It's something that, you know, all of a sudden is coming up in pop psychology, if you will, you know. So nevertheless, let's go, okay? So I say, to start this topic off, let's enter perusing over some quick and basic information on the topic of discussion, which will be narcissism. Some basic psychological Q&A and psychological perspectives and information on NPD, which is Narcissistic Personality Disorder. I'll call it that for short, so I'm not using the whole terminology as we're going through all of this, okay? Who coined the term? It was physician Henry Havelock Ellis in 1898. On the speculation of contemporary authority on this subject, okay? While there are many experts on the subject that are still living and promulgating information on the topic, Heinz Kohut is considered a significant figure in the development of cell psychology, a theoretical framework that focuses on the development of the self in relation to others, okay? In order to get into this subject, for those who do not know much about it, let's go over the 10 clinically proven signs of NPD. This will get you pegged by somebody in a clinic. Oh, you have narcissistic personality disorder. It's somebody that knows some of these will peg you and say, oh yeah, I'm probably dealing with a narcissist, you know? So the first one you have is grandiosity, which is an exaggerated sense of self-importance, belief in being superior. 2 is a need for admiration, constant craving for praise and attention. 3 is lack of empathy, difficulty understanding or caring about the feelings of others. 4 is exploitative behavior, using others for personal gain without regard for their needs. 5, envy and arrogance, feeling envious of others and believing they are inferior. 6, a sense of entitlement, believing they deserve special treatment and privileges. 7, interpersonal problems, difficulty maintaining relationships due to their demanding nature. 8, difficulty with receiving criticism, becoming defensive or enraged when criticized. 9, fantasies of success, power, or brilliance, obsessing over fantasies of unlimited success, beauty, or power. 10, boastfulness or bragging, tendency to brag about achievements and possessions. Here are some examples that I found of 10 things a narcissist might say. I'm the best at what I do. Another one is, you're so lucky to know me. Another one is, I deserve special treatment. Another one is, you're just jealous of me. Another one that they might say is, I know more than you. Another one is, I am always right. Another one, here we go, is, you're so insensitive. Another one is, everyone else is to blame. Another one, here we go, is I'm a victim. And another one, here we go, and the last one we're going to touch on is I'm the only one who understands. Haven't you ever said any one of these things? Be honest about it. You don't have to tell me, okay? Because I'm going to be honest with you. In some of my immature, ego-inflated moments, I've said some of these things. Or I've had some of these thoughts and was hell-bent on thinking that I was right in these thoughts, okay? Some may say that makes me a narcissist. However, I think we all have a little bit of grandiosity to get out of the way, or that gets to the best of us sometimes, okay? So in order to look into where this disorder might have sprung from contemporarily, let's look at it from a sociological perspective. One could argue that a root cause of Western society's grandiosity lies on one side of the list as a possibility, in its emphasis on individualism and unchecked ambition. Individualism. Western culture heavily prioritizes individual achievement, self-reliance, and the pursuit of personal goals. While this can foster innovation and personal growth, it can also lead to a sense of entitlement and a disregard for the needs of others. Unchecked ambition. Capitalism, a dominant force in Western society, feels a constant drive for success, wealth, and power. This can create an environment where competition and the pursuit of material possessions become paramount, potentially leading to a devaluation of cooperation, empathy, and community. Lacking or lack of meaningful connection. The focus on individual achievement can sometimes lead to social isolation and a lack of meaningful connection with others. This can contribute to feelings of emptiness and a need to compensate by seeking external validation and admiration. Let's continue now to hypothetically investigate how the collective consciousness of the United States, with its emphasis on individualism and unchecked ambition, can inadvertently foster behaviors that align with cluster B personality traits, particularly that of Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD. This is the opposite investigatory stance of what will later follow in this lecture, because it also could be seen that this situational disorder / disease of NPD has come about due to overt conformity. We will enter upon this stance here a bit and much more deeply later. So to continue from the sociological angle, the pressure to conform, while individualism is celebrated, there's also a strong undercurrent of pressure to conform to societal expectations of success, wealth, and status. This can create a paradoxical situation. Individuals are encouraged to pursue their own goals, yet they are also subtly pressured to achieve a specific, often materialistic definition of success that aligns with the prevailing social norms. This pressure can lead to a focus on external validation, a need for admiration, and a disregard for the needs of others, all hallmarks of NPD. On this note, I have a mentor that was talking to me, and he really, he's getting towards the end of his life, and he knew me ever since I was a young buck, running amok in the streets, doing all type of crazy stuff that I'm not going to really talk about at this point in time right now. However, he asked me, man, what is the meaning of happiness to you? You know, what do you define that as? And I had to let him know that, you know, I define it as not as the world or a society would define it. I enjoy things, and I look at happiness as those things that make me intrinsically happy. And I try to find happiness in everything that I have going on. And at the end of the day, I look at success like I'm not rich, you know. I don't drive the best looking vehicle, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I'm happy inside with all of the things that I have. And I'm happy every day that I wake up because of just the beauty of life and nature, and the fact that I'm able to focus myself on things that make my life worthwhile and are points of deep concentration for me that to me reveal and contain the mysteries of life itself. You know, I'm always on a mystery hunt every single day, you know what I mean? And things that are inanimate to most people speak to me as if they were living. So that's basically how I came at it with him. And you know, he was really touched by it and happy to hear it, because he's come to the same conclusion in all of his years of living. He's almost 90 years old at this point, but he recognized that he's getting close, you know. So that's something that he had to ask me. And a lot of people that are under the spell of these times, under the spell of society, if you will, cannot answer in that way. You know, they're too busy keeping up with the Joneses and trying to chase all the materialistic pleasures, and if we're honest, a lot of times not being able to attain. And then if they are able to attain, not even being happy with what they have. And then sometimes, and in most cases, not being able to keep all that they have, you know, and accruing upon themselves a deeper crisis to deal with. Okay? So, the illusion of meritocracy is another point here. The American dream, with its promise of upward mobility through hard work and merit, can create an illusion of meritocracy. However, systematic inequalities and privilege often play a significant role in determining individual success. This can lead to a sense of entitlement among those who succeed, while simultaneously fostering resentment and feelings of inadequacy in those who struggle. This dynamic can contribute to a culture of competition, exploitation, and a lack of empathy, key characteristics associated with cluster B personalities. Okay? The cult of celebrity is another thing here, okay? American culture often glorifies wealth, fame, and celebrity. This can create a distorted sense of reality where superficial appearances and outward displays of success are valued above genuine character and meaningful contributions. This can inadvertently encourage individuals to cultivate a larger-than-life persona, seek constant attention, and prioritize self-promotion behaviors that align with narcissistic tendencies. Facebook is a big for example of all of this, you know. I know people on Facebook right now, I'm telling you right now, that post things that it makes me laugh, because it's like, dude, I know you in real life. You're flossing up here as if this is your everyday life, and you do this so much, and it's like, dude, this is not your life. You don't have a life like this, man. You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter is, some of those individuals from when I was really on Facebook heavy like that, some of those individuals, if they were really living the lives that they portrayed, they wouldn't want to post anything on Facebook, because they would get popped like this, okay? So it's just really funny, but it's like, where are they getting that from? They're getting that from the stars that they revere. They're getting that from the influences that they're under, and the people that they're trying to be like, who they are not. So society's role in narcissism and the Ouroboros of judgment, because it's truly an Ouroboros. We're eating each other up left and right with what it is that we're doing, and we're doing it instead of others that are devouring our livelihood anyways. Like, if we would step back from these sources of BS inspiration, what would end up happening, they'd fall in one day. In one day, they would fall down. They would fall face first. However, we keep holding them up with the sweat of our backs, okay? And from the sweat of our brow, blood, sweat, and tears, they end up getting everything out of it. And we end up getting nothing, okay? So let me start by saying that society plays an undeniable role in the creation and perpetuation of what we call narcissism, as what we have already seen here shows, okay? Narcissistic tendencies don't arise out of nowhere. They are a reaction to the pressures and values that society imposes. In a culture that celebrates material success, outward perfection, and relentless self-promotion, is it any wonder that individuals feel compelled to create masks, exaggerated personas to gain approval? This fake it till you make it mentality is encouraged at every turn. We're told to present the best version of ourselves to succeed, even if that version is just a facade. And I've seen people die over that facade. Literally die. I've seen people die over that facade and get injured and everything else, man. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's like, we sell our souls. There's an old saying in scripture that says, what benefit is it for a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And many people that, are trying to sell their souls in the process of gaining the world end up losing their lives, So, now, when this survival mechanism, this mask, becomes exaggerated to the point that it starts interfering with relationships or emotional health, it gets labeled as narcissistic personality disorder. But what is NPD really, if not a symptom of the broader cultural sickness? A society built on shallow metrics of success, status, money, appearance, breeds these behaviors. And then has the audacity to turn around and stigmatize those who embody them to the extreme. Don't you see the way that they're eating us, we're eating them? It's the Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its own tail. We're seeing this right here, And definitely Ouroboros incest. The word Ouroboros incest deals with a narcissistic tendency to want to return to the mother, the comforts of the womb, and live in a plush chlorine way that causes you to avoid responsibility. Okay, and that's another big thing that I really think that this is it's an avoidance of the responsibility to know thyself, which is the wisdom of the sages. Okay, and that takes the heroic aspect, which I believe is healing to those that have NPD or have been said to have NPD, to take on the heroic aspect, to face one's fears, to live genuinely, to face the ridicule of not going with the crowd and being like everybody else. Okay? So, and here is the irony. In today's discourse, particularly online, people are quick to label anyone they have had a bad interaction with as a narcissist. Entire communities and high traffic content pages are devoted to demonizing narcissists. Most of these individuals in the comments or audience, right, have had painful social interactions, usually in relationships, and use the label of NPD as a way to make sense of their suffering. Yet many of these so-called narcissists have never been clinically diagnosed, as I said earlier. So how can you call this person a narcissist if you didn't make the terminology, and if you have no right to term this person as such? Aren't you making a uneducated claim? So some could say that I'm doing that here with what I'm saying here in this lecture, but really open your ears, think for yourself. Think for yourself is all I'm trying to say here, okay? Even if they had been, okay, though the label changes, even if they had been narcissists, okay, is that what that means? Though the label changes nothing about the root cause. Society contributes to these traits and then punishes those who display them. And here's the kicker. Those who engage in the vilification of narcissists often do so with their own form of grandiosity, an inflated victim's narrative. Oh, I was hurt by a narcissist and they're terrible people and and you have to watch out for them and Wait, you don't have the ability to stand up to people and draw the line for yourself when somebody is crossing those borderlines, or to lovingly bring them back to the middle? And then if you can't do that, man, hey, you need to get out of my face. You need to get out of my face. I'm going to clear my sacred space of you. That's what has to be done. And many people have done that. However, they continue on with the victim narrative and suck up all the attention that they get from playing the victim. Okay? So they position themselves as moral judges, passively, aggressively criticizing someone with what is fundamentally a mental health condition. In doing so, they mirror the very traits they claim to abhor, which means hate. It's hypocrisy in its purest form. This isn't just about individuals, this is about a societal division. We've seen divides in history by race, by sex, by class, but this is a finer, more intimate division, isolating individuals within their societal and familial circles based on personality traits. The moment someone exhibits behaviors that align with traits of NPD, the fear of being victimized takes over, and they are outed or ostracized. What we're seeing is society eating itself, a true Ouroboros. It's a snake swallowing its own tail, a hypocritical judgment cycle that only deepens the divide. Okay? So, a more universal compassion and understanding is the antidote to the narcissistic divide. And, it is true that sometimes you just need to be able to stand up and draw your boundary line, until somebody else achieves the growth that's necessary to bring them back into your circle, okay? So what society fails to recognize is that the Ouroboros of judgment is a reflection of itself. The othering of individuals with NPD, turning them into villains, is not a solution, but a symptom of a much deeper problem. A society that values superficiality over authenticity, that rewards external successes but punishes internal struggles, is one that fosters narcissism in the first place. Think about it. Those who hate narcissists most passionately often exhibit the same behaviors they criticize. In claiming the moral high ground, they inflate their own sense of self as victims or passive aggressors. But by judging others for their narcissism, they demonstrate their own grandiosity. Only this time it's cloaked in righteousness. This cycle of blame and projection becomes self-perpetuating. And it is not just about individuals, it's about systems. And I'm going to put like I said, a layover that's going to show how this progresses, okay? You just follow it from left to right and you'll see how this progresses, and you'll see from top down how it's instilled into the society down to the family units and how we just continue on with it, okay? The very society that devalues vulnerability and forces people to perform their worth is the same one that ostracizes those who internalize these values to an extreme. Narcissists are not born in isolation. They are shaped by the same cultural forces that shape us all. To vilify them without understanding their context is to deny our shared humanity. From a psychological standpoint, we can view this dynamic through the lens of Carl Jung's concept of the persona and shadow. The persona is the social mask we wear to fit into society, while the shadow represents the parts of ourselves we suppress or reject. Society, in its obsession with appearances, demands a polished persona, but demonizes those whose shadows slip through. Now, how does the shadow slip through? Through complexes, okay? Because complexes reside in the realm of the shadow, and they also come from the realm of the anthropos, okay? They can be linked to archetypal roots, okay? And those ones are the ones that are really, really, really super autonomous, okay? Things get really crazy there, okay? So, narcissists, in a way, are society's shadow. By rejecting them, we are rejecting our own reflection, the parts of ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge. The path forward is not more judgment, but more compassion. Those with NPD deserve empathy. They deserve empathy, not because their behavior should be excused, but because their condition is a response to trauma, unmet needs, and societal pressures. At the same time, those who have been hurt by narcissistic behavior also deserve healing and understanding. Both sides of this divide need empathy because both are caught in the same cultural web. And once again, I've been hurt by narcissists coming up. That's how you get psychological complexes, okay? I've been hurt by people undoubtedly that had cluster B personality disorders. I'm gonna tell on myself probably again right here. I did over 10 years in California state prisons, okay? For armed robberies, okay? I've been clean of doing crime. I've been living a very legal life for a long time, okay? So I can talk about this, but I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot. I've been hurt by a lot of people too, you know? During my time on the streets, in gangs, during my time in prison. You see what I'm saying? And the truth is, only due to my higher self and the resiliency in my character over time was I able to extract strength from those times and situations that I'm endeavoring to give here back to you guys. Okay? So we're gonna read this portion here. It says, in demonizing narcissists, society mirrors their very behavior. Okay? The cycle won't stop until we collectively acknowledge this Ouroboros and decide to break it. That starts with understanding, not vilification. It starts with recognizing that mental health conditions are not moral failings. And it starts with realizing that every judgment we pass on others reveals something about ourselves. If we want to heal this divide, we need to look in the mirror and accept what we see. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about narcissism. This is about all of us. Carl Jung was very fond of these pattern-revealing tools called a quaternio. It's called a quaternio. So we will use one to help shed light on this subject. It helps to focus on its contents and let your unconscious mind fill in some of the blanks. Okay? Here's a quaternio relative to narcissism that will help us visualize much of what we talked about here. And if you focus on it, you may receive some insights of your own upon this lecture topic and its deep information. Diagrams such as this have helped me to concretize information I've studied and have also helped me to glimpse innovations that I previously could not. Encoded within prevalent and repetitively pushed narratives on topics of wide interest. You know, it kind of helps you to read in between the lines. It teases that information in between the lines out to the surface. So this quaternio is going to be comprised of Narcissist, which is going to be at the top, Echo, which is going to be at the bottom, and Narcissist is key to the idea of narcissists, okay? Echo is going to be at the bottom, Narcissist at the top, Hermes is going to be on the left, and Apollo is going to be on the right, okay? And I'm going to run through the determinants here on this quaternio. That way, as you're looking at this, you can basically get an understanding more of what we just went through right now, okay? So narcissist at the top, okay, which is going to be opposed, okay, the opposite of the one at the bottom. The one on the left is going to be the opposite of the one on the right, okay? And we can basically put something together by looking at this in terms of opposites, okay? Narcissist represents fixation on the ego and self-image, a critical stage in self-discovery, but problematic if not transcended. This archetype is relevant for understanding the risks of solipsism and self-centeredness. So the core qualities basically of narcissists, we can look at our vanity, self-absorption, stasis, just being stuck on oneself, and reflection, okay? Echo is going to be on the bottom position, right under narcissist in this crossbar. Echo, as the complementary opposite, Echo dissolves herself entirely into narcissist, right? Narcissist didn't see her. He only heard her later on. You know, he was totally fixated on himself, and she loved him, okay? And he suffered for breaking her heart, okay? And we see this time and time again with narcissists in relationships, breaking somebody's heart, you know, not hearing them, not understanding them, okay? She's going to symbolize the loss of individuality and the danger of over-identifying with others to the point of erasure, okay? That's the whole victim idea. The narcissist echo axis is going to reflect extremes of self-focus versus self-neglect. Okay, self-focus being narcissist, self-neglect being echo. The core qualities of echo are going to be submission, dependence, repetition, and longing. So Hermes is going to be on the left. Hermes is chosen as the mediator because of his role as a psychopomp, okay, and connector of the opposites. Hermes can traverse boundaries between narcissists' internal fixation and Echo's external longing, offering the possibility of integration and balance, because if we're healthily longing and we're healthily internalizing and fixating on inner content, we're going to be healthy. Okay, that's a healthy thing to do. Retreating inward and going outward. Okay. So the core qualities of Hermes are adaptability, transformation, and relationship building, because Hermes is the one that puts the two individuals in the alchemical opus, Sol and Luna, together. He's the one that brings them together in love through the conjunctio urge, okay? And that's what the dove or the star represents in the Rosarium Philosophorum woodcuts, okay? He's central to all of that, okay? So Apollo is going to be to Hermes' right, okay? Apollo introduces the clarity and harmony needed to counteract Narcissus' stagnant self-absorption and Echo's chaotic longing. As a god of light and reason, Apollo helps transcend these extremes through rational self-awareness and sense of purpose. All things you gotta have. The qualities of Apollo are clarity, rationality, harmony, and direction, okay? So the fifth quintessence, the center of this whole thing, okay, is going to be the self, okay? The self unites these archetypal dynamics, representing a state where the opposites of self-focus and self-sacrifice, as well as mediation and clarity, are harmonized. It reflects the goal of individuation, where one integrates the shadow, narcissist, anima, echo, and guiding principles, Hermes and Apollo. And keep in mind, Apollo is the sun. Hermes can also be said to be the more feminine principle in this whole gamut, okay? And that would comprise Sol and Luna, which we see in the alchemical marriage, which is known as the conjunctio, okay? So we have a real powerful quaternio by which we can look at this whole idea that's being brought forth in this lecture, all right? So some additional focuses on the quintessence of this quaternio, the self. The quintessence at the center is harmonious relational wholeness, where over the little s self or false ego driven self-awareness, okay, which is narcissist, okay, over connection with others and interrelational over dependence in echo, adaptability and malleability in Hermes, and structured purpose in Apollo may unite to form a balanced individual capable of true relationship with self and others. My hope with the aforementioned was not to bog you down with a bunch of crazy information, but to help focus your mind for the next and last portion of this lecture, in which we will talk more about some of the things I have taken away from my meanderings on the topic of narcissism. And after this video, I would like for you to look in the description of this video for a PDF link which will lead to a nice read on Jung's lost contributions to the study of this disorder, NPD, which once again I believe is an aberration in the system that has simply been created by our society and named, thus created. When you name something, you create something, okay?
And I believe it's an aberration in the system that has simply been created by our society, and it's clashed with older, outdated, but timeless viewpoints on morality. And obviously a number of other factors have led to it being a subject of interest and an appetite for the fearful person who may be leaning too much towards a victim mentality, which, as I and others much greater than me have said copiously, is an ego inflation. Being a victim, oh, I'm a victim, poor me, poor me. That type of mentality is an ego inflation. It's the same as the narcissist wanting to lord it over you and look at me and I'm greater than everyone else. I'm the one that knows everything. You know what I'm saying? The victim mentality is the same thing on the opposite side. Okay? So now we're going to get into the main body of the lecture, and hopefully I don't run this too long and run down your guys' attention, but this is a really, really interesting subject to me, and I know that this is going to be interesting to you guys as well, though, too. Many of you that have a mind that can absorb it, okay? So to start this topic off, and this lecture on NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, I would like to read off some notes that I felt were important to start this lecture off with. Okay, NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, as we talked about earlier, has been studied since the late 1800s, yet only in 1980 was recognized in the DSM-3. Carl Gustav Jung, who did not speak of NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, under such terms, spoke of grandiosity and ego inflation, okay? Also archetypal possession, okay? He was continually touching on this disorder with his concepts. Marie-Louise von Franz was noted for saying that Jungian psychologists didn't simply go along with the diagnosis of individuals. The analytic psychologists would rather, and I think in a much better fashion, treat individuals' whole history and also treat them as new individuals in analysis, instead of just placing a generalized diagnosis on them and treating them after such, okay? As aforementioned, I urge you to look at Jung's contribution to the dilemma of narcissism, Lost Contribution to the Dilemma of Narcissism by Jeffrey Sadanover, which was written in 1986. A link to that PDF paper will be in the description to this video. Sam Vaknick, a prominent psychologist on the subject of NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, had something very poignant, to me at least, to say, which was that there are many religious overtones and undertones in narcissistic personality disorder. This is because religious overtones betray the idea of archetypal possession and also the compulsion and worship that come along with such a possession. He also stated that narcissists are mini missionaries that sacrifice you when they succeed in converting you to their religion. Okay, believe in me, follow me. I'm the one, not anyone else, you know? So with these statements as sort of a caveat, but also something to interest you in this subject, as if nobody was interested in this subject to begin with, because it's a hot topic, okay? Let us begin. So let me see. Jung spoke of an individual in a group as being in his psyche a heart, a den of murderers, okay? And this was in Collected Work 7, paragraph 240. And that this individual that he's talking about, whose heart is a den of murderers, right? That he is, to the group's beliefs, converted, for example, in that he is overly complicit with their viewpoints, following obediently and often unconsciously, okay? This thought leads me to the point in which Jung states that the degree and size of the group lends towards the degree of boorish stupidity of the adherents as one group. They're idiots because it's a hive mind at this point. It's a group mind at this point. One isn't thinking individually, they're thinking for the betterment of the group. They're thinking what the group wants to think them, lest they be chastised, okay? So they're thinking as one, okay? And this is due to their individuality being thus compromised. This is largely due to the group reinforcing its norms upon the individual and their individuality. In contrast to what I've just said, smaller groups tend to the integrity of the individual. This stated, groups, while being maternal containers, are governed by paternal rule sets and overseers and pundits of the system, which lead me to recall an idea by Professor of Clinical Psychology, once more, Sam Vaknick, in which he speaks of the false self of the narcissist as a primitive, savage parental deity, a Moloch, which demands human sacrifice, starting first with the NPDers, or the person that has NPD, their true self, okay? They sacrifice the true self first, and then he sacrifices you and everybody else that he comes into contact with to the false self, okay? To that false ideal. So when using the idea of Moloch, it is wise to remember also that Moloch and sacrifice to Moloch can represent dedication of dreams, goals, and true ideals to another, such as that of the country, the state, the group, a relationship, etc. And there is definitely a great degree of sacrifice entailed within one's following of those aforementioned ideals, groups, values, etc. Okay? And I'm going to throw up that diagram again that I put together for this lecture because it speaks deeply to this. How we're led into this ideology, how we're led into this following. Okay? So in order to give one a deeper understanding of the hidden dynamics of the grandiosity that even one may possess within inside of themselves and not understand or see, because the narcissist does not see that they are grandiose. They can't see what they're doing, okay? They believe that they're right. I am going to reference the 42 negative confessions of the deceased Egyptian at the scales of judgment, which has a lot to say about narcissism, also known as morbid grandiosity. Now, these 42 negative confessions, it's too much to read. It's 42 of them, okay? But it kind of goes like this. Think of the 10 commandments if you remember those, okay? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not commit adultery. Instead of those, you're saying, I have not ever killed, I have not ever stolen, I have not ever committed adultery, I have not ever bear false witness against my neighbor. So it's basically saying I have not done these things, okay? That's really what it is the whole way, and each of those I have not are dedicated to a deity that in some function represents the tormenting for that, the rewarding for that, and the function of those things, okay? Because it's a sin against those deities, basically. And the perfected Egyptian, mind you, announced that there's no part of his body that isn't part of the gods, and he named all of his body parts after the deities, okay? And so that's something to think about too, in that the deities being archetypal energies are linked also to the psyche and also to the actual being of the individual. Why? Because the Elohim were the us, let us make man in our own image after our own likeness. So we were created in the likeness of angels, even in the biblical idea, okay? So, okay, this disclosure of the 42 negative confessions occurs at the judgment scales as the heart of the deceased is being weighed by the feather of Ma'at, which is the god of justice, balance, right, truth, and order. And I'm going to show a picture of this scene, okay? Okay, and the heart of the deceased, okay, it had to equal to the lightness of the feather of Ma'at. Otherwise, it, along with the essence of the being of the judged, would be fed to a horrendous monster named Amit. for deletion, or in possibly the Catholic or Christian flavor, because you have a lot of individuals that deciphered the Egyptian text and added different twists and ideas to the whole thing, that maybe they were either deleted if the heart didn't weigh out to the feather of Ma'at, or they were sent on somewhere further for torment in some type of hell, okay? If one reads the 42 negative confessions truthfully with a true heart, a creeping guilt begins to enter. At least it does so for me. It creeps into the conscience, because saying it without shame is to essentially lie to divine beings. This also happens to me when I look at the 42 negative confessions, because I have done quite a few things named on this list, which I will include a link to the description of the 42 negative confessions of the deceased Egyptian, okay? Just in case you're unfamiliar with the reading. Let us suppose that the statements that the individual were reading were true. Even in their heart, these confessions confirm that the deceased's behavior did not cause any upheaval or any disruption to societal peace. Anyone alive knows well that they have caused someone unrest at some point. It is said that the deceased Egyptian could deny in this way with a clear conscience due to having taken an oath of purity before entering the temple service. Doesn't that sound kind of reminiscent of people believing that they're going to heaven because they believe in Jesus Christ, and because, you know, they've said all these prayers, and maybe because they're paying all these offerings and they're doing all these good deeds, or whatever penance it may be, okay? This points to something bigger, I think, which is the fact that religion and politics go hand in hand in much the same way that Venus rules both Taurus and Libra in twin symbolic fashion in astrology. You can see this really prevalently in the tarot cards of Libra and Taurus as well, though, too, okay? So in twin symbolic fashion, Venus rules Taurus and Libra, okay? To explain this further, Venus can represent divinity or desire towards divinity, and it also can represent carnality and the desire towards such. The group container, which is that following that qualifies the self to the ego via its identity rationing faculties, meaning offices that give you, yourself, back to you through some type of following. For instance, it could be church, it could be the military, it could be a group that you are linked to that gives you some sense of belonging and makes you feel like you are somebody. This container, when it breaks down, let's take religion, for example, which is sealed with by the sign of Taurus esoterically. When it breaks down, the container of politics is on the other side and awaits for you, which is sealed esoterically by Libra. Thus, the failed aspirant to the former religion, as Edward F. Edinger outlined in his book Ego and Archetype, expressed comments and diagrams showing sufficiently that the breakdown of such a vessel, such as religion, okay, or more easily understood, the inability of a person to receive the self from a group of such a nature as religion, will allow the correlative, which will be politics, to be an easy place taker or placeholder for the old group, and for the same reason, the one for interaction and linking back to the self. Okay. Religion, religare, actually means a linking back to the self, or a linking back to the knowledge of the self. Okay. So this impossible to make negative confession, if you are honest with yourself, as I have just been openly with you, is analogous to the idea and phenomenon of projection. So the inner stance that you take towards these confessions betrays or otherwise unintentionally informs one who can see of your inner depths or lack thereof, right, within your psychological maturity. And also it betrays to the same person your degree of blindness to your own sense of grandiosity. In his work Aeon, Jung sheds light on this, as shadow projection has the effect of isolating the subject from the environment, turning a real relationship into an illusory one, okay, a fake one. The shadow is most definitely a construct of unresolved trauma and also of the pressures of society upon us, which are unresolved. Our inability to understand and regulate the ramifications of its ever-impending crisis are what sinks us into the ever-enveloping and constricting shadow which we project upon others and which comprises our level of grandiosity. We all have a shadow, but the narcissist is said, like Peter Pan, not to have a shadow, which is a movie that portrays the regressive narcissistic personality disorder sufferer in his dream world, which one must obviously leave in order to grow up. And in other words, to individuate past the cultural born crisis echoing within such a person that has NPD, and this crisis swallows up those around him, keeping all those people in a childlike state. For example, in arguments, in states of conflict, for reasons that don't exist. These people are fighting shadows on the wall, which they only recognize when they are rid of such an individual. Hindsight always being 20/20. One exalted person that could, with sure conscience, admit those 42 negative confessions would assuredly seem not to possess any shadow traits. There are plenty narcissists and religious adherents, people high up in law, police officers. I've known some of them that, oh, you just seem so like such a good person, like you would never harm a fly, and then you hear something later on down the line, you know what I mean? You could say the same thing about them basically, right? Who are operating out of a false mask, whose small s self or ego or false self, right, is autonomously hiding the shadow and skillfully, better than some of you, projecting it onto others. Going back to the Peter Pan idea, in therapy, if Peter Pan was to sit in the analyst seat, for instance, the analyst would feed Peter's projections back into him, much like an alchemist would have done to the rising vapors in a reflux flask. And in this case, made parallel with the case of a truly grandiose person, this cyclical act would lead to an eruption. Such a person taking constructive criticism, which this would be, as a slight or a full-on attack. However, putting formal therapy aside, which I'm not qualified to even speak upon, we need to learn how to do this regulation upon ourselves. With our own grandiosity and with our own grandiose ideations, and also upon our haphazardly emerging projections, which is called recollection of projections. A weak or young ego, a tyro, a beginner, cannot even approach doing so, and such are those that fall into the classification many times of the narcissist. With a healthy awareness of the not I-ness of the shadow, because it's not you, right? Which means approaching the shadow consciously, can one only then state the 42 negative confessions in a more spiritualized and correct way, in that way being without inflation, okay? The ability for self-care then, self-empathy and care for others is a grand prerequisite to dealing with the shadow. You can't just hop up one day and say, oh, I'm going to work on the shadow, without having to be able to really do these and work on these things with yourself and with others, okay? Because it takes a lot of understanding to deal with the shadow, okay? There's a lot in there. Some of it that's not yours. It's not yours at all to deal with. Some of it that, you can start to work on and take responsibility for, but even a lot of that's not yours. It's social programming, okay? So being able to have that type of self-care, and care for others, empathy, okay? Being able to cultivate that is prerequisite to dealing with the shadow, okay, which is the causal realm of projection, namely complexes being triggered there, okay? The latter of which, projection, right? The latter of which the Narcissistic Personality Disorder experience, for example, grandiosity, okay? It's rife with that. It's rife with projection of shadow contents, okay? When you're grandiose or when you are an NPD case, okay? You're projecting all the time. As conscious egos, we need to take responsibility for what is actually ours. For example, functioning from the conscious seat of the ego, making choices, taking responsibility for our own decisions, okay? We need to know also how to identify what is not ours and also learn to identify what is truly ours. Along my personal road with self-development, I have noted that there are implicit dangers in identifying with grandiose states. For example, overt pride and also even deep depression. Those mentioned states of mind are not ours. They are not our own thoughts or feelings, but are sent from something higher. The self, God, the devil, the realm of archetypes, whatever you wish to call it. The reason I can say this is because the divine psyche and the animal psyche are linked. And also keep in mind, complexes have to do with sulfur. Sulfur links directly to the idea of the devil. And that's where we get these egoic inflations if we're not mature enough to deal with them. It can be a burning fire. It can be something that warms you. Something that you get solace from because I've overcome this. You can be like, man, I should have been triggered here, but I'm able to recollect the projection, you know what I mean? So it's sulfur, and that's the masculine side of the work, okay? Mercury being the feminine side of the work, and then you have salt, okay? Which is something different. We and one of these days here we'll talk about those three determinants in the alchemical work, which are analogous to psychology, okay? So the reason I say that this stuff is coming from God, okay, the devil and all these other different things, is because the divine psyche and the animal psyche are linked. It is those two, the animal and the religious, the God and the bestial energies that toss us about within. And identifying with the feelings we act out outside of us upon other people in our day-to-day situations. The key in this dynamic is to know where you find yourself internally and subjectively within this dynamic I've just spoken of, and to really think about the opposite. If you are feeling very animalistic and carnal, you need to ask yourself, where did that cool, calm, spiritual aspect of myself go? And you will find that it lies right behind the subjective feeling you are experiencing in the present. And from this point, you can identify both sides of this gamut, and you can also find the third accommodating position and conscious attitude that could begin to help you to remedy these maladies, which are sicknesses, for you, okay? You can find groups, for instance. You can find certain things that you can do to get that energy out. You see what I'm saying? Or you can simply bottle these things up and see what each of them turns into, because they actually turn into different things. You'll find power in this because you'll learn that by sitting on this, not repressing it, but consciously looking at it, the energy will turn into something else. And you'll be able to make that energy malleable and pliable in your day-to-day life and towards certain ends, okay? So it's not you, but I don't say these things to let us all off the hook, okay? Totally. But rather to draw our attention to forces beyond our grasp, even down to the societal forces which are beyond our grasp, which have shaped our viewpoint of our reality, which we talked about earlier, okay? We need to remember that we are not responsible for the contents of the unconscious. For example, the images and emotions being creations of the creator or nature. We are, however, responsible for what we do with the subjective feelings via our actions. That's what we're responsible for. Because it can happen here, it can happen here, it can happen in your thoughts, it can happen in your emotions, but it's up to you to put it into action. And a lot of times we do it without thinking, okay? So in closing out this long lecture, I would like to go for a quick review of the determining factors for diagnosis for NPD and a parallel within scriptural data, which is very interesting to say the least. Here are once again the 9 determinants in the DSM for Narcissistic Personality Disorder to be diagnosed on a patient, about 5 of which will qualify one to have the disorder. Okay, and I think I was right about 5. The number should be 5. Maybe I'm right there. Hopefully I am. Number 1 is a grandiose sense of self-importance. Number 2 is a need for excessive admiration, okay? And we're going to parallel these to certain scriptural references in the Bible that will cover them, and we're going to be shown something here, okay? Bear with me. Both of these are covered by the commandment which says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," okay? Having a grandiose sense of self-importance, okay? Having a need for excessive admiration, okay? That means that the person with NPD is saying, or the person with a inflated grandiosity says, "I'm God. You're not supposed to have any other God but me in this situation," you know? Number 3 is a lack of empathy. The blind and pitiless endorsement in the Bible, okay, of the killing of countless men, women, and children by Jehovah is plain enough to describe this determinant. Number 4 is a sense of entitlement. People, and in the Bible, people claiming to have ownership of God by race, and also God owning his people by race, called the chosen race ideology, suffices here for this determinant. And I'm reading these type of things to you here because you can also look at, oh man, what about groups, criminal groups like Nazis that push racial ideologies and stuff like that, and extreme African American groups. You can say Latino groups, like Southsiders, Sureños are like that. It's all about the raza. This is something that covers that, okay? Supreme sense of entitlement, okay? Number 5 is exploitative behavior. The fact that in Scripture the creation was subject to frustration in hopes of he who created it suffices this determinant. Yeah, I'm going to put you in this situation and it's going to cause you all this stuff so that I can get some narcissistic supply of this. Yeah, I'm going to scratch your car. You know what I mean? I'm going to put some sugar in your tank because of what you did to me over here. You know what I'm saying? I've seen that happen in these relationships rife with projection, shadow projections, and narcissism, grandiosity, okay? I'm going to put you through this situation that you didn't have to go through for my own glory so that I can bring you out of it, okay? That's what this is. Number 6 is arrogance. The same scriptural idea that seals determinants 1 and 2 also seal number 6, which is the commandment that says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Arrogance. Because this statement, if a man is to say this and believe this of himself, will act out in the worst type of arrogance one has still yet to see. Envy is the 7th determinant. It is stated in Scripture when Jehovah is addressing the Israelites that I, the Lord, am a jealous God. Also let us remember that the spirit lusts against the flesh and the flesh lusts against the spirit, which is scriptural as well. Okay, envy. I don't think these people should be having this, or oh man, oh, look at this person with their nice car, man, thinks he's this or this or this or this. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, the jealousy in God, as attested in the Bible, it was there first. It's there in you because this is grandiosity. This is grandiosity. It was there before we were here. Okay? Let's continue. The eighth determinant is a preoccupation with power, success, or beauty. Okay? In scripture, that has harkened back to, in scripture that harkens back to the idea that the temple was prescribed to be built with painstaking measurements, sacrifices mandated compulsively and repetitively, and the failure to do so would have resulted in the deaths of many. Okay? If you think about people that are, so narcissistic, you look at, the stars, like these narcissistic people on TV and the media, they always gotta look good. They always, not one little thing can be out of line. And if it is, they have a fit, they lose it. If they drop one little Kool-Aid drop on their white tux, oh, they lose it, man. So materialistic, it's just a piece of thread, man. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's I guess a failed example, but there's truth in it. There's a lot of truth in it. Think about it, okay? The ninth determinant is a fragile self-esteem that is easily threatened by criticism. In scripture, let us think about Jesus' temptation in the wilderness by Satan, namely in Matthew 4, 7 through 8. Also see Deuteronomy 6:16. And I'll put these things up on the screen for you as well too, so you can see them, okay? And it's one of those things where it's like, nah, don't come at me with any criticism. Like who the hell are you talking about right now? Like what are you saying? What do you mean by that? We've seen that in those mafia movies. What are you trying to say by that? What do you mean by that? I'm a funny guy, huh? You think I'm funny, huh? Am I funny to you? Am I a clown? That is that type of thing. You see that in that small man syndrome. The delusions of grandeur, grand being in that as well too, grandiosity, okay? So, while my elaborations upon the 9 determinants for NPD and the DSM may seem sacrilegious and bordering very closely on hubris or hybris, I do so in order to elaborate on a fact that is felt by anyone with a shred of piety who hears this. And the fact is that Psalms 7:11 states, God, the self, or the transpersonal, is angry with the wicked every day. So, if God's angry with you every day, if the higher self is angry with you every day and you're out of alignment with it because you're following the ego, that is hell on earth for you, inside of you, and those outside of you, okay? So we're touching on NPD here, okay? The wicked in this text is equivalent to the ego willfully acting and existing out of its choice to follow its own grandiosity and to the end at that. And it is out of an over-identification with archetype or the self, basically saying I'm God. This state of wickedness is ignorance of the transpersonal, whether willful or otherwise, and it elicits a response from the transpersonal, as Psalm 7:12 continues to say. If he turn not, the transgressing grandiose ego is what it's talking about. He, the self, or transpersonal, big S self, okay, will whet, W-H-E-T, his sword. Whet means to sharpen the blade of a tool or a weapon, okay? The Hebrew word for whet is latash. Latash, and besides to sharpen, okay, it can mean to hammer out, which shows us that we fashion our very own downfall. And it's been fashioned for us societally, It's in the structure, okay? And our downfall, if it does not destroy us, it is instructional to how we must rebuild ourselves therefrom. Okay, I had a guy in prison when I was doing time that he's a big reason why I'm the way I am now, why I'm a changed person, and it's because he told me, he's like, you know what, youngster, you know what your job is to do, and I was like, who the hell does this dude think he is, man, telling me what my job is doing? And I was like, yeah, let's hear it. And he's like, your job is to unfuck yourself. And I was like, what? And like, honestly, I thought about punching this dude, you know? And I was like, you know, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, look, this is what I mean by that, man, is that we're all in here because we couldn't follow the rules in society. We couldn't follow the rules, okay? Something was wrong with us from the gate. We couldn't make it. Find a middle line and just make it. We messed up somewhere along the way. So the thing is, we have to figure out what it was that caused us initially to mess up along the way. You know, whether it was all for our fault or not. You were really young, so you had parents. That might have been an issue, your upbringing, you know, things that you saw along the way. But what was it? And I remember I had to leave him for a minute to go and do something. There was something I had to do, and then I came back and I really asked him to elaborate on it, and he did so. And our conversation, it set the platform for a lot of the change that I was able to receive, because then I really started cracking open a lot of the books to help me remedy a lot of these situations for myself, you know, and hopefully to help do this or to help catalyze this for others, okay? So we were talking about latash and how it means that it sharpen, and it also means to hammer something out, okay? To forge something, something of most likely vengeance, something that's a tool that can help to get you back on path or destroy you, okay? So continuing the scripture, it says, he, which refers to the self, the higher self, okay, big S self, hath bent his bow and made it ready. We can, in this vein, remember Diana or Artemis, which is the equivalent, and that her weapon was the bow, and that she did not spare mortals, women, men, nor children, okay? And she was a protector of children. So if she would spare not even the things that she would protect in lieu of getting justice, that's something to think about, what the unconscious will do, because she was symbolized by the moon, which is the realm of the unconscious. Nemesis, or karma nemesis, which was a Greek goddess, was a divider of fortunes, mostly known for her acts of retribution as well. And she is very pertinent here as well, for it was Nemesis that punished Narcissus, who is narcissism's namesake, for his vanity in repeatedly pushing away the advances of Nemesis' adherent, who deeply and truly loved Narcissus, whose name was Echo. And we talked about her on that crossbar, okay? On that quaternio earlier, okay? Which gave us a quintessence. Poor Narcissist, one might say, who met his downfall. In this day and age, many would say that he got exactly what he deserved. Think about what these people are saying on these forums about narcissists. They are the villain. They are the villain par excellence, okay? However, we should really look once again, let's harken back to the 42 negative confessions of the Egyptian and think to ourselves, are our hands really that clean from grandiosity in the way we have dealt with people in our past? The curative here is to assess truthfully our capacity for how we have treated and how we do treat our fellow man, and not to the standards of society, which are dwindling ever so quickly in you know, as far as morals are concerned, okay? However, we must hearken back to the law in our hearts, and also listen to the voice of our conscience, which is its harbinger, okay? And there we will find the answer to whether or not we are responding appropriately and in a way that will not cause our downfall in due time. This makes me think about situations that I have fresh on my plate now with individuals that are clearly narcissists on the outskirts of my life. And I need to think sometimes about who and how I used to be, and not simply look at the growth that I've experienced and the self-righteousness that can inundate me so far under in such a way that I cannot see that another might be able to still change. I leave you with these things to think about because of the blindness of society towards these people, so-called narcissists, that are suffering so, and many times at the hand of individuals that are acting out of the same psychological model, if you will, but on the direct and opposite side, which is a holistic side, but rather the side of individuals that are stuck in the state of victimhood and its dependence, okay? Let's harken back to that quaternio that I put up there. And I'll put it back up there again though too, that quaternio with that quintessence, okay? Because it's what this is talking about right here. Let's look at the whole gamut. Let's not just look at one side. Let's not just look at the culprit, the person we think is the culprit here in the situation, okay? Let's look at the whole thing. Let us remember that every interaction that we have, even the ones that leave us scarred with lessons to carry with us, okay? Because they leave us with lessons to carry, with burdens to carry a lot of times, okay? They contain power in them that can only make us stronger if we can move forward and not dwell on the pain and on the hurt that was caused. It is only then that we can grow past the situation and transform it, because with true love, which sometimes means distancing oneself from one that continues to hurt one in the same manner time after time again, that love conquers all things. And love of this nature links to forgiveness. And not only forgiveness of the one that has hurt us, but forgiveness of ourselves. And that frees us with the ability to move forward, which brings credence and much validity to the idea of being wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. I hope you guys have enjoyed this lecture series here, and I hope that you guys have been able to gain something from all this talking here that has gone on as I'm reading about this lecture and as I'm speaking to you about this idea that I just want to throw forward and elaborate upon the idea that has been so culturally accepted as far as narcissism, NPD, and narcissists just in general, okay? Please think about this. Please tell me what you think about this lecture. Please tell me what you think about this take on it, because I think in a large way that we're taking a one-sided approach. And keep in mind, if we take a one-sided approach to something and only look at one side of it, we will be torn by the other side so quickly, so quickly. We're setting ourselves up for it, okay? So if you like this if you like this video after this reading, and it's super late right now, once again, please give me a like, please share it. If you know any forums that might want to listen to this lecture, please share this on the forum. Please tickle the algorithms for me, guys, so that we can continue to get stuff out like this if you indeed do like this and if you indeed were touched by the message here. Thank you, and have a good night.